every customer that walks in the door needs to be treated like they're the only person in the restaurant. And if the restaurant is full, there's ways to apologize for the restaurant being full. Like, I know this is going to be hard to believe, man, but we are totally booked. But let me take one more spin around.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mastering Restaurant Revenue, the podcast where restaurant dreams meet real-world strategy. We're your hosts, Bruce Russo, with 45 years in the industry, over 550 concepts designed and built, countless national and regional awards. I consider him the GOAT of this country's restaurant design and build industry. And I'm Diane Armitage, with 30 years as owner of a global marketing company, with 22 years dedicated strictly to hospitality, restaurants particularly. And I do concept creation from opening day, specializing in helping restaurants design not just a space, but unique and ingenious strategies for bigger and bigger revenue. So whether you're an owner-operator or just love the art of dining out, join us as we dish out strategies that go beyond the same old stuff, especially great leveraged revenue stuff that you hear out there. Let's build something extraordinary. So please like and share this podcast. And I want to say hello, Bruce. Thank you for coming on board again.
How are you today?
I am doing really great. Good to see your face again. And today I wanted to talk about like one of the first revenue pods. Now, you talk about revenue pods, and I want you to explain that again briefly in case this is the first time anyone's showed up on our podcast. What are revenue pods?
Revenue pods throughout the restaurant, per se, would be the bar, would be the main dining, would be to go, would be any patio, anything that is within the restaurant itself. But when I say pod of revenue, each one operates differently than the other, and each one has its own profit margin.
Absolutely.
Example would be, I like to design to where there's an area when the clients come in, they sit for a cocktail and an appetizer.
Not necessarily the bar.
Not necessarily the bar. It's away from the bar because it's served differently than the bar. So it may be 4 or 5 deuces along the wall, maybe a 4 top, depending on the size of the group. But we want to get the app and the first cocktail in them. It's the first and foremost thing, because we know those 2 items are the most profitable items on the menu. And for restaurant owners, we are in the business to make a profit.
To make money.
And then it just goes on from there. Right. And it just goes on from there.
It really is up to the host or hostess or maitre d' at that station at the front of the restaurant to talk them into moving into that little cocktail table space. What would you call that thing? It's like
so here's what I've seen by the best. By the best hostess, by the best maitre d', when you walk in, they greet you like they're the owner.
Yes.
And the conversation they have with you, they converse like they're the owner. That wins a lot of clients. And it's a simple offer. Can I take you over here and buy you a drink? Now, that's just verbiage. You're not buying their drink, but you're putting them exactly where you want them to be. You've led them to the revenue pod. And then always, we always want to check them out, cash them out before they go to dine. Because we don't want them to go home and see a huge ticket average, because it's kind of unfair with the apps, you start adding apps and the main ticket average plus wine plus whatever would happen at the dining experience, it might look expensive. So the best thing to do is cash the guest out at the revenue pod 1 before you take them to dining. They don't go home and they don't add the checks together.
Correct. So, and when you have a person come into a restaurant, anybody coming into a restaurant, whether they are familiar with the restaurant or not, you have this great phrase that you use called the 3-second scan. So can you explain what you call the 3-second scan?
Well, by human nature, and I've sat and watched hundreds of people do this, and it's human nature. When a guest walks in, they 1001, 1002, 1003. They scan the restaurant, and for whatever their mind is scanning it for, it could be where they want to sit or what place looks the best, or maybe they're scanning to see if they know somebody. But in that 3 seconds, they've decided where they want to sit in the restaurant, typically. Or if they're just going to go to the bar, the dining room looks too crowded, I'm just going to hang out at the bar and get a quick dinner and get out of here. So that 3-second window, and, I know everybody that's listening out there, the next time you go to a restaurant, just watch as people walk in, and you'll see it happens every time. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And so when a host or hostess is standing at the hostess stand at the front of the restaurant, you can expect that 3-second span is going to happen, even if the host or hostess is talking to the person.
Correct.
So like there will be times when I come in, the host greets me, and at that same time, I'm doing my 3-second scan of the restaurant and kind of deciding where I want to kind of be. So if you are a host or a hostess or a maitre d', it's good to know that this 3-second scan is going on. Now, a lot of times I'll walk in, I go to restaurants a lot as a single, simply because I'm doing restaurant reviews, or I'm choosing to eat out on my own, or for whatever reason. And a lot of times I'll come in and want to just kind of scan the restaurant just because I kind of want to feel like, okay, this is where I'm going to be a little more comfortable sitting tonight based on what the restaurant looks like, kind of thing. And it's interesting when there's a wall directly behind the host stand and I can't do my scan, I actually will step to the side of the host stand and step into the restaurant so that I can see the restaurant. So for me, I find that a full wall right behind the host stand is a little, I don't know, disarming, and it's all unconscious. Like I didn't even think about it until you started talking about that 3-second scan.
Okay,
but
so
how do you design
talk
restaurants to have a wall or not have a wall?
Okay, and that wall that you're talking about is what I call the logo wall. Typically, when I design a wall behind the host, that's the logo wall. And for many reasons, but I typically don't put that wall unless the check average is above $100 a plate. Because
why is that?
I need that privacy, semi-privacy. And as you said, you can step one step into the restaurant and see everything you need to see. It's more of the client not be able to see the door opening and closing all the time.
Correct.
And it's more for it's more for the diners. And typically a design would be you'd have the logo wall and then the bar is right behind it. So the door opening and closing is kind of a nuisance when you get into when you get into the upper check averages. There's a lot of privacy boxes that I check, because now we're getting into defined by default. So, when you put the logo wall, now you have privacy by default at the bar. Instead of somebody walking in and talking to the host and seeing John sitting at the bar and, hey, John, what's going on? You've seen it. I've seen it. People kind of scream across the entire restaurant because they just seen one of their buddies or their friend. You see what I'm saying? So that logo wall, that's really the purpose of that.
I like that. It's interesting. When you and I were in Fort Lauderdale recently working on another restaurant possibility, we were in one of the restaurants that you had designed. And I think back to how you designed that restaurant. When we came in that front door, and it was chilly for Fort Lauderdale, when we came in the front door, you had designed dining way over here. You had a bar that was set back from the front door so that no one was sitting with their back to the door and getting blown with wind or whatever every time the door came in. And then you had more big dining, stair stepped up behind the bar, to the back of the restaurant. And I think that's genius. I mean, most people don't even think about that. They think, we've got to get all these tables in here. And you actually had a significant space between where the host stand was and the main funnel of traffic, and with dining over here to the side. That was very good of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So, okay. So
by design.
So, by design. Okay, now I want to talk about what you said about the host or hostess or maitre d' greeting you as if they are an owner. Now, I love your attitude about this. Your feeling is that these people need to be given permission to act like the owner.
Correct.
And why do you say that is so important?
Well, number one, they need to be trained like they're the owner. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then they're allowed, then given permission to act like the owner.
Big difference.
And you've seen the professionals out there that do it, and when they do it, I mean, it's like it's a home run. Yeah, you don't say no to them. Hey, let me get you this. Let me get this bottle. I know it's $400, but man, wait. I mean, they're selling, they're greeting, they're treating you like they're the owner, and
correct.
They give you the sense that there's nobody else in the restaurant, but you that just walked in. That's the most important part. You could have 500 people in a restaurant, but a good maitre d' or hostess will treat you like you're the only one in the restaurant.
I have a question about something that kind of bugs me. So at most host stands, you will have the host or hostess standing there, but you'll also have the phone there for people who are calling in for reservations. And in many cases, people are also calling in for takeout at the same phone. And it's all kind of bundled up there at the reception desk, at the host stand. And so you'll walk in and they're on the phone, and then the phone rings again and they're on the phone again. That kind of a thing. How do you separate the two so that this person greeting you is actually treating you like you're the most important person who's walked into the restaurant?
Well, I can tell you that is a common fight with me and the owner. Any owner of the restaurant, because they want the phone there. It's like, you know what? That person needs to be in the back room answering the phone.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. And in the Michelin-starred restaurants I've worked with, that person is in the back office answering the phone for all the reservations. Correct. And they actually have a separate line for the takeout.
Yes. And so when the president is doing a speech, does he answer the phone? Same thing.
Good point.
But that's what I'm telling you, the importance of that client walking in the door. What are you going to say? Wait a minute, I'm on the phone? That doesn't work. So I've had many arguments putting the phone at the host stand for that same reason. Because, we're going to cut labor and we're going to have them be the hostess and answer the phone.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't work.
What I find is when I do walk in and they're on the phone, they won't even look up at you and make eye contact.
That's my point.
They want you to know that they're busy on the phone. And I get that. But at the same time, I'm the one in person here. I'm the one who's walked into the restaurant.
That's the signal that was just sent that you're not important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's something that really needs to be resolved. And then I will say that one of the biggest issues I have is when I walk into a restaurant. In fact, I won't even go to a restaurant in Laguna Beach anymore because they did this probably 3 times in a row to me. And I thought, I don't like the sound of that. But when I walked in, they said, I'm sorry, we're fully committed. And they didn't even ask me. I mean, I said, I'm one, or there are going to be two of us here. And they said, no, sorry, we're fully committed tonight. Okay. So, and in most cases, they don't even say sorry. They just say, we're fully committed. To me, that is such a standoffish, go away kind of messaging. I get that they're saying, we're booked fully with reservations, and, it's a busy night for us. Here's what I can do for you. So when you think about, here's what I can do for you, because I'm so sorry, we're not going to be able to seat you. And if we do, it's going to be 2 hours. It's going to make you crazy. So here's what I can do for you instead. So Bruce, when you are working with training and all that kind of thing, I have ideas in my head about how I help train front of house. What would you say to help train these people to say something more engaging so that these people want to come back again? I mean, I haven't been to that restaurant in probably 10 years because of that.
Well, and they deserve so. They deserve so.
Thank you.
As I said earlier,
yeah,
every customer that walks in the door needs to be treated like they're the only person in the restaurant. And if the restaurant is full, there's ways to apologize for the restaurant being full. Like, I know this is going to be hard to believe, man, but we are totally booked. But let me take one more spin around, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, and I'm going to name them. I'm going to name them because they're a great restaurant, Mastro's, Phoenix.
I love this story. I do want you to tell this story.
The very first one. Same. We walked in. It was probably their third or fourth day. And the maitre d' shook my hand, told him who I was. He said, oh, I know the name. He said, but, we're fully booked. Did you have a reservation? I said, no, we're in from Dallas, and, I know this is opening. He said, well, we're fully booked, but let me just see what I can do. Okay. And Mary and I stood and watched him get two busboys, walked a table through the dining room with two chairs following, put it down, and then he came back and got us. He said, it's the exit of the kitchen. He said, but that's all I got. He said, that's the best I can do. I said, how can I not accept that? So
yes.
And I can tell you that I've probably told that story 500 times.
Right.
So if you were to go back and, if they would approach it a different way, we know if the restaurant is full, you and I both know they can find a table for one more person.
Yes, this is true. Well, and, how about, our bar isn't as crowded. Would you be interested in eating at the bar? Or how about I at least buy you a drink to apologize for the fact that we just have no room?
All of the above.
Right.
Or go to the bar, and if the bar is a little bit full, just ask the client, hey, can you scoot one? I'm just trying to fit one more lovely lady into the bar. If everybody can scoot down 3 inches, I would surely appreciate it.
Right.
Okay. And how many times would you tell that story?
Well, it's true.
And
it's true. It's
think
making an effort.
Well, but the thing of it is, I think when you speak when it comes to the Laguna restaurants, people listen.
This is true.
And if you had a story to tell about how the saving grace happened instead of the nightmare, it'd be a whole lot better.
Well, and you and I both know that because I write Best of Laguna Beach, I rarely write about the nightmares because I'm not your common restaurant reviewer. I'm here to support all of the restaurants in Laguna Beach.
Right.
So I just don't talk about
good,
the restaurant.
bad, or otherwise. Yeah,
it's
good,
just
bad,
a
or
vacant
otherwise.
black space.
Yeah.
And, and there will be people and even owners will call me and say, why aren't you covering our restaurant? And then we'll have a frank talk, about it because, there's nobody paying me to support their restaurant in this town. And I will go on and on and on about the restaurants that really are working their tails off to take care of their public and their patrons.
And you know,
because it's a rarity.
well, and knowing you like I know you, we've been friends a long time. You don't have an expectation level when you walk in.
No.
You don't expect any kind of privileged service from anybody.
No. And I always pay my own way. I will not let that happen either. You know, I mean, every now and then I'll have an owner come over and say, hey, I really want you to try this. But in most cases, their servers, unless I've been there repeatedly, they don't even know who I am. And I like that, you know, because, and I don't go in with any expectation like that. So like tonight, we're going to a restaurant opening. I'm going with friends, and the host there has absolutely no idea who I am. I know that person doesn't. And it's good because then I can see.
And sometimes it's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you get a true authentic dining experience then.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it amazing when you have a host or a maitre d' who's absolutely stellar? I mean, you remember this guy. I think you remembered this guy's name the last time we talked about this story. The guy at Mastro's in, was it Scottsdale, Arizona?
Yeah.
You remembered his name.
Yeah.
And that was how many years ago? So,
15 years ago?
When you think about, I mean, they make such an impact on you, and you know that those are the risers in the company as well, because they are going out of their way. So really important. But understand that it is your first pot of revenue. That person is responsible for your first pod of revenue.
Yes.
So another thing that I always like to talk about is, you know, if a person doesn't want to eat in the bar and they do want to eat in the restaurant, that kind of a thing, the worst thing you can do is have the host or hostess grab the menus and walk 10 feet ahead of you and put the menus down on the table and then just leave. It's the worst thing to do. I mean, for heaven's sake, you know, I mean, when I'm with my mother who's on her little walker, we just can't do it that quickly. But walking side by side with us and talking to my mother and talking to me as we're going to the table is an entirely different experience. And it only takes a few more seconds of time than to race ahead and throw the menus down and race back. Yeah.
And guess who the least trained person in the restaurant is?
The host or the hostess.
Yes. Sad to say.
Yes. Yeah. At least front of house.
During pre-open,
sure.
You know, you go to restaurants, you know, and I see it every day, but, you know, 2 to 3 weeks before they open and they're doing training and do you ever see 5 or 6 hostess being trained?
No.
Come in an hour early tomorrow. You're going to be the host and we're going to show you how to do it.
Well, that's how I started my restaurant business world when I was 15. I was the hostess, and that was always the way it was. You know, it was like, you know, you may come in for an hour before your first shift ever as a 15-year-old.
Yeah. And we're going to train you.
They have you come in and and then, you know, and then you're on your own. And it really is amazing what a responsibility it is. And
not a whole lot of 15-year-olds.
Host or hostess
Yeah. Not a whole lot of 15-year-olds have an very outgoing charisma to them. That's
true.
Very
and
few.
You have to have that.
Yes.
I mean, you can't have a host or hostess who just kind of stands behind the bar and looks sort of sleek, but doesn't really, you know, want to engage with you. That is not the personality that you want at your stand. Yeah.
Blink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was working in the when I was working with these guys, Michelin restaurants in Vegas, they had 2 of them at the time. They had this guy who was a maitre d' at one of their restaurants, and he was so polished and he was so beautiful and he was so nice to every single person who walked in that place. And people would come there because of him.
Yes.
Because they enjoyed the experience from the moment they walked in from the elevator and were in his arms. You know, he was taking care of them.
Yes.
And they just adored that guy. And they came back year after year after year for him. And this is really the importance.
That's what I was saying earlier. You know, the pros that are out there, you and I have both seen them. And those guys, they need to have their own training program for other restaurants. whether it's online or whatever it is. And really they could train these people by just making a 10-minute video of that maitre d' taking care of the customer as they come in. 10-minute video, it would say everything.
Yep, it's true. It's interesting. Yes, in fact, the gentleman who was in charge of the training, the director of operations there, I talk about him a lot. His name is Joe Marsco. He's the coolest. He's just so good at front of house operations. And now he's running a gigantic country club. He was running huge restaurants for a long time. And he's actually putting an app together that's very similar to that, where you actually have examples of this professionalism that's part of the video training program for all these people coming in. And I think it's going to be fabulous because it just shows people immediately, this is exactly what you do. This is exactly how you act. And it supplements the training of the restaurant, however good or bad that training may be. So I think it's awesome.
To seeing that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. Other than that, I mean, the other thing I would say about hosts and hostesses is like sometimes I'll opt for the bar because I think that, as a single, sometimes I feel a little safer when I sit at the bar because at least I know there's a bartender who has eye contact with me and is kind of keeping tabs on me, so to speak. And I know that when I say, you know what, I'm just going to go sit at the bar, and the hostess may say, okay, and just stand at this host stand. I think it's better I love it when a host will walk with me into the bar and help me find either the table that I want or a seat at the bar and give me a menu. And, they think, oh, well, they're going to the bar. It's not my job. It's the bartender's job. And I've told you the story before when I went to one of my favorite restaurants here in Laguna, late afternoon, just to grab a late lunch, decided to sit at the bar. And I was there for 11 and a half minutes with nobody greeting me. And I knew the bartender was kind of in that shift change where he was refilling and getting stuff from the back. I get all of that. But to have her say, okay, and then she's standing up at the post stand doing nothing, and I'm sitting there at the bar with no menu, no water, no nothing. And I think I had something like 8 or 9 people, servers, the hostess, the GM of the day, that assistant GM, all walk past me, talk around me in their little gossipy circles, not even acknowledging that I was there. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's a good thing that I love this restaurant and that this must be just sort of an off day, but there's a chink in the training that is happening here. And I love it when they still take a personal interest in getting you to your preferred space, even if it's at the bar.
Well, it starts with we walking in the door and ends with you being seated. I mean, it's just basic stuff. And the business, you and I both know the business falls prey to the shortcuts in every category. Prey to
the shortcuts. You've got the best lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business that falls prey to the shortcuts. I mean, you and I both know it. We see it every day.
It's absolutely the truth. Well, I'm going to be very interested to see how the pre-training went for the restaurant opening here in Laguna tonight. I think it's going to be great to see that. And I know I'll be talking offline with you about that. And just to see, where they understand where this all begins. So we are already we're almost at our half-hour mark.
Oh, wow. Time flies.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah. So next week, I want to talk more about the bar. I want to talk about that as a pod of revenue and talk about all the magic that you put into bars that most people don't even recognize, but they unconsciously scrabble looking for if it's missing. And how that helps increase the revenue pods in that particular area as well.
Yes.
All right. Any closing words for you?
No, it's as always, pleasure doing a show with you and look forward to doing many, many more. You and I together have a lot to tell the industry.
Yes, we do.
Now, whether they listen or not, I think they're missing out on a lot of good things.
Well, we actually, for those of you who don't know, Bruce and I actually started with him being a guest on my radio show that I do weekly. And that guest spot, when we started talking about restaurants, I thought, oh, it's going to be a minor thing. It ended up being the most popular of all of the weeks when I bring him in once a month. And so we know that there are a lot of chefs and restaurant owners out there all over the world, actually, who are telling us that they're listening to what we have to say. And I really appreciate that because, yeah, everybody wants to have a great experience at a restaurant, and every restaurant owner and chef wants to have a great experience owning and operating the restaurant as well. And that's just what we're here for.
And from the customer side, I know we talk a lot about the business, but customers need to listen too, because they can put together in our conversations how their experiences happen magically in the restaurant, or not so magically, or maybe they're disasters. I don't know, but I think you and I tell enough of what we know for somebody to figure out when they've had a bad experience, pretty much how it happened. If they start putting the clues together. And
I have had so many friends and listeners tell me that it's so educational for them, because they never understood the magnitude of operating a restaurant. They just don't understand it. They never see that side behind the curtain, so to speak. And when they begin to understand all of the pieces that have to work to make the symphony happen every night, then they have greater understanding and patience even with what's happening in that particular place. And they're more supportive of what's happening in these restaurants. So I have people who contact me after every show we do, and they're like, I just love learning about, I mean, it was nothing I would ever think I wanted to learn about, but then you taught me about all this stuff.
I know. And, when I had the TV show on ABC, it was the same way. I mean, a lot of, that's what the show was about. My goal was to get across, when you walk in a restaurant, I want to show you what it took to get to the point where you come walk in and eat dinner. And it was, trust me, it was a huge success because it told the story.
Right. Build It with Bruce. I loved it. I watched every episode. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
good.
All right. So hoping to help all of you folks out there in one way or another. Thank you. And everybody, please share this podcast if you will, and we will be back with you next week. You guys make it a great week.
Thank you for joining Bruce and Diane on this journey of mastering restaurant revenue. Please take a moment to subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps them deliver even more of what you want to hear. Until next time, keep refining your approach, stay passionate about your craft, and here's to your restaurant's continued success.